The first day walking on the yard, they had a gym, and I look up and there's officers or guards walking around. They look like Rambo. No bullshit. They have shotguns. They have percussion grenades. They have all of these things. And I asked the guys, so why do those guys have the guns? They will shoot you if you do something bad. If you hear that gun go off, you get down.
Just based on your experience, is there a different way of doing this completely? Or do you think for some people, this is the only way?
To me, if you have to keep somebody in prison forever, then that means your system is failing.
What lessons do you learn when you are solo for 30 days?
It turned me into an animal that I didn't know was in me.
You have been literally punched in the face. You have gone through this adversity, right?
Yeah.
And is the closest thing that you could think of to giving your kids that same experience, obviously within reason, is it through sport? Is it through fitness, in your opinion?
Trying to tell them that will be your easiest route if you start right now, if you start really pushing yourself. If they could focus on one thing and not be overwhelmed when they do turn 18 with life, that's what I'm hoping for, is getting that to click. All right, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's do it. So Brian, just tell me, so we got connected through a mutual friend of ours, Esteban, and we started talking about coffee, which I definitely want to talk about coffee because you're a unique guy. You own a coffee company, like a barbecue sauce or hot sauce company, and also a tattoo shop. Is that correct? Those three?
Yeah. That's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
So talk to me about, I don't know how you got into those three. Are like, like for me, it'd be like, oh, I own a gym, I own an online business. But for you, it's like, dude, it's like hot sauce, this. I want to hear more about those. But before we dive into the business side, I definitely want to kind of give the audience and for myself, like more of a background in your transformation and your journey, because one of the things that really stood out to me is that you, obviously you spent, you got into some early trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've lost like what, well over 100 pounds. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I want to hear more about it and how you got to that point, and then how you've been able to keep it off. And dude, there's just a lot to dive into. Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'll just kind of ramble through the youth and stop me anytime, or if you want me to go back into anything, let me know. But yeah, we grew. I was born outside of Chicago, and then my mom moved us out to Vegas when I was 3, and so I grew up with just my mom. I didn't know my dad until about 10 years ago or so. My mom, she had my sister, and then we just kind of bounced around Vegas for most of my youth, pretty much moving all the time. New boyfriends, all just, I guess as you get older, you kind of realize like what it's like to be a parent and the struggles that for me at that point, though, I didn't really think about any of that until I became an adult. And, but now looking back on it, it was constant moving, finding food, finding clothes, finding shoes, all of these things, to where it ended up to where, as I got into 10, 11, 12 years old, was when I started getting into a lot of trouble. And I was thinking about it this morning, thinking about talking to you about all this stuff. And because some people have brought up, I got hit in the head when I was 10, and they had to like bring me back to life when I was playing base. It was a baseball that nailed me. And now with looking back at that, I wonder if that has anything to do with it. But anyway,
you had brain trauma or an injury that wasn't. Oh,
they had to, I was dead, and they had to like cut my skull open, pull my skull off my brain a few times. And I was out for a couple weeks for that one.
Well, just pausing for a quick moment. So you grew up without a father, and until recently you reconnected. But you have how many children do you have, Brian?
I have 3.
You have 3 children. I definitely want to dive into like how that changes your perspective as a parent, and then also talking about like the dangers of sports and where you're at with your kids. But let's keep it going. But I love that's some really interesting dynamics to dive into that I don't think many people have those experiences. So I want to, let's roll.
Yeah. Just trying to give some context. And a lot of it I forget, honestly, until I'm having a conversation like this. But yeah, so around 10, I think going into about the end of 5th grade, 6th grade was when all the school trouble started. Just I don't know, just acting out, getting into fights, starting and growing up in the areas that I grew up in Vegas. They weren't necessarily the best areas at all. So, but sports were even early on was something that kept me out of trouble. And the more or the less that sports were involved with my life was when I started getting into more trouble, and it's having more free time, spending more time, I was living in an apartment. So, just the kids that were kind of in similar situations, instead of going to practice, we were just getting in trouble. And anyways, it just kept escalating to where, stealing a pack of gum turned into stealing credit cards, and then robbing houses, and then stealing the cars. And then at my freshman year of high school, I got kicked out of high school. They sent me to a opportunity school, like a continuation school. And then they told me there's no point in even coming. They didn't even want anything to do with me. So
is it because you were at that point, did you get kicked out because you just weren't showing up, or did you get kicked out for something specific?
Yeah, when I got kicked out of high school is because I had a knife on me. And I'm sorry if I just talk about these things nonchalantly. I'm definitely, I do take it very serious. And I do understand now how serious these things were. At the time, I just didn't have any sense of like consequence or anything like that, being accountable for my actions, and honestly didn't have a reason to. And again, not trying to justify any of it, but again, looking back, but again, just kept going. And then, at one point just had zero money and like none, and just started robbing again, started from credit cards to houses, to where like when I would go rob a house it wasn't like I was stealing a TV. I would steal like the change jar, like to have money to just buy stuff and necessities. And then it got to the point where I went and I broke into a friend's house at the time and stole her dad's gun. And then there was a Wells Fargo. This is how stupid I was, is that there was a Wells Fargo that I could look down into the drive-through ATM from my apartment. And I decided that was a good idea. That was the best location for me to rob people, was 250 feet away from my apartment.
And at this point, you're what, 15, 16 years old?
Yeah, I was 16. And it was actually a month before my 16th birthday, 30 years ago. Yeah, I'm coming up on 30 years, 1995.
Wow.
And I got a couple other younger kids to go. We came up with this plan that, I could run up to the car, tell them to give me the money. And then one of the other guys would pop up over the wall with the gun. And, we'd say,
give me
say shoot them, so it was, and you could only get out $300. But at that point, that was, big bucks. That was like robbing a vault for us. Anyways, our dumbasses. So we get away with it. We get away with that one.
So you basically, you go and you rob someone at gunpoint, right?
Yeah.
And do you think at the time, I'm curious because I don't have any experience with this. And so I'm always wondering, do you think that at that point at your age, like was there any intent, like, if things went wrong, did you ever think about like, would you actually shoot that person? Or was it like, hey, look, I know I'm not going to shoot this person. I'm not even going to bring it loaded. I'm just there to threaten. Or do you think there's a part of you just like, you know what, man, like, I don't even care. Like, how does that work at that age?
There was no thought into that. There wasn't any, if this happens, we do this. And that was pretty much how I had been living. That's a good question. That was my life, was not thinking of this is going to hurt somebody, or what this could do to these people. And we'll get into it later, but it is something that since then, like when I got out of prison, actually, I'll try not to skip ahead too much.
Yeah, no, this is really interesting to me because it shines light on a different perspective that I have so many questions in regards to raising the youth that I want to continue to ask you on. But
yeah. So 2 days later, we decided we were going to do it again. at the same location. And so we went and did it. And this family, this time, and these are the things that bother me now, is that it was a family. It was like a father, a mother, and a kid in the car. And when I did it, and one of the guys that I was with had like a ski mask, like looked like freaking terrorists in Moscow or whatever that was, whenever that Olympics. Anyways, when I looked up and he had the gun, the guy pulled off, sped off. So we jumped back over the wall into our apartments, and I went over to my buddy's house and I stashed the gun. And a couple hours, not a couple hours later, maybe an hour later, we went outside to smoke a cigarette. And when I walked outside Metro, the police in Vegas, the guy turned around and he goes, "What's your guys' names?" And my buddy's, he goes, "Carlos." And he goes, "What's your name?" And I said, "Brian." And he goes, "All right, Carlos, you go back inside. Brian, come on." And the two other guys that I had done this with, they had already caught them. These two were friends. They put everything on me, told the cops everything. And so at that point, they arrested me, took me to juvenile hall in Vegas. And then that was November 15th. December 3rd, they came and got me from juvenile hall and transferred me to the county jail in Vegas. And because they, at the time, and they probably still do it, if you use a firearm or anything in your crimes, then they could try you as an adult. And it obviously, like I've said, I was doing other things, but this was the first time. This was my first offense, and that I had gotten caught for. And,
right. And what did your mom say when you were taken to juvie and now, I mean, I can only imagine how scared you potentially were, but what did your mom say?
My mom said when she heard the helicopters flying over that she knew it involved me somehow. So she knew. And when I was stealing, when I was robbing people, I remember one conversation that we had, and my mom said, she said, "I don't know what you're doing to get this stuff, but if you can buy dog food and buy some food for the house, that would be cool too." So that's where we were. That's where we were. And again, not to, I'm not trying to pin it on my mom at all. She had her issues with gambling, with drugs and all of that stuff. So, she had her struggles and still does, just like everybody else. But I was out of control, man, and getting arrested and then, going to county jail. So they sent me to county jail and they put me on the 9th floor. So as I'm learning all of this, kind of being introduced into this new world that I have no idea how to navigate, I'm around men. I'm the youngest kid. I'm a kid. I'm the youngest person by far.
Yeah, you're about 16 at that time?
I'm 16. Oh, they transferred me on my birthday, my 17th birthday. And so they put me up there. There were guys that were appealing death sentences that were on death row that I was with. Just people that I find out later were they're violent murder. They're fighting murder charges and all of that. But again, it wasn't sinking in. And I just didn't understand the situation that I had gotten myself into and how serious it was. And then, so I was in county jail for about 4 months. They sentenced me, and through that, I was like, I'll join the military. I'll do whatever, just let me out. And, I go to sentencing and they read my sentence, and I looked over to the guy next to me and I go, "What does that even mean?" Because they would say like consecutive and 2 to this and 3 to that. And he said, "It means you're going to prison." And I was like, "What? That doesn't make sense." And, but yeah, so they send me up to, a couple weeks later, they transfer you and they send you to, at the time it was Indian Springs outside of Vegas, which was intake. And you get there and you're in intake for about 30 days. And it's, you're in segregation, but you're with a cellie.
How was prison? So again, you have to excuse my lack of knowledge here, but when you went from juvie to the county, I imagine that was significantly different in terms of like threat assessment, men, not boys. Was there a huge difference between the county and the prison, like night and day, or not really? Similar people?
Yes. Yeah. There's a major difference between juvenile hall, just because we're basically a bunch of youngsters that don't care,
right?
That again still have no sense of consequence or again accountability. And then you get to county jail, and it's more people looking back on it now and understanding how things were working. It's men that understand that you have to keep yourself in check. Otherwise bad things are going to happen. Fortunately, since I did grow up playing sports, like a little bit of everything in the neighborhood, I was able to play basketball. We had a basketball hoop up there, and then just doing just regular dumb stuff, and then learning how to play cards. And I guess that was my earliest experience with networking is getting there, and then kind of finding a common ground. Again, I'm in there with just dudes that are like what people are in prison.
Yeah.
And so I was there. It went as well as it could at county jail. And then going to prison, again, you got your intake, and then you hit the yard. And when you hit the first day walking on the yard, they had a gym, and on the gym they had a catwalk that went around the gym. And I look up, and there's officers or guards walking around. They look like Rambo. No bullshit. They have shotguns. They have percussion grenades. They have all of these things. And I asked the guy, so why do those guys have the guns? I had no idea. This is how clueless I was. And he said, they will shoot you if you do something bad. If you hear that gun go off, you get down. And I was like, okay, really? And then another funny, interesting thing was they had a store on the yard, and I went to buy cigarettes, and they wouldn't sell me cigarettes because I was underage. They had sent me to an adult prison, but they wouldn't sell me cigarettes because I was underage. They put me in prison with grown men. But again, it was that was always an interesting thing. But yeah, I started. I got it. It's weird, man. When I went to my unit, they put me in with an older guy, Corky, and then I was next to another old guy that were old. The only way to really say it is they were old, white gangbangers. They were in the white gangs, and but they were so far removed from it that I didn't have to dive into playing prison games and politics and all of that. They were kind of like, instead of preparing me for that, they were trying to say, hey, just do your time and be cool. All right, cool. I start playing handball. I start working out there.
Do you think they put you in that cell like intentionally? Because I imagine there's a lot of politics in jail, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But did you know at the time, how many years did they actually sentence you to?
So they sentenced me. It was a 3 to 7 year sentence, because they cut the deal that I took. They had knocked off 2 other charges, and then just basically I pled to that. So they gave me the 3. I would do a minimum of 3 years, maximum of 7. And then I'll get to why I didn't get out in 3 years in a second. But go ahead.
I'm just wondering, like, at this point, it must be sinking into you a little bit. And I guess the reason why this is interesting to me is, like, at a young age, I think back to some of the stuff that I did, and it was really stupid. Like, you look at, you're like, dude, what was I thinking? Like, it was just so dumb.
Yeah.
And as a dad now, I'm just like, I'm trying to find compassion for my children when they do something that's like, it's like, dude, come on, what were you thinking? But it's like, your brain hasn't fully developed yet. Mm-hmm. But does it now sink in for you at this point? You have these old timers that are kind of taking you. Did they kind of take you underneath their wing a little bit and protect you in that sense, or not really?
So these guys were just minding their own business. They were just doing their own thing at that point. And again, since I started, like, they had a softball field, so I was playing softball. I was getting to know more people like that. The moment it sunk in was there was this Indian guy, Billy, and not trying, I'm not at any point while I'm talking about any of this stuff, I'm definitely not trying to glorify it or make the situation anything more than it was. But this Indian guy, Billy, he was really cool to me. But he could have been in Last of the Mohicans. Like, this dude looked like a warrior. But he was really cool, really sweet to me. There was a couple, not sweet, nice. Sweet's not the right word when we're talking about prison, but he was very nice. And I remember saying a couple things to him, and he would say, "Hey man, don't say that. It's not cool. You don't say those things." I said, "All right." And then one time he let me borrow a magazine, and he came out to the weight yard. We had like a fenced in area, and he goes, "Hey, where's my magazine at? You saw that magazine?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, when do you plan on giving it to me?" And I said, and I was joking. I thought I was joking. I said, "I'll give it to you when I'm done with it." Joking again. And he goes, "No, we're going to go get it right now." And I was like, "Well, just give me a minute." He goes, "No, come on. Like, get the fuck out of there. Like, let's go get my shit."
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I still think we're joking. As we're walking across the yard to get his magazine, he does this like back fist thing straight into my nose. And I'm like, "What is going on, man?" And, that's when then he starts with like, "You think you can just talk to people like that? You think you can do these things and get away with it?" And, he's like, "You're lucky you're my friend." He's like, "Or I'd be fucking," like he's going on. Like he's trying to teach me a lesson and let me know where he stands and why you don't. Anyways, we get back, I get his magazine. And then that was when I started, I started really, I think, thinking about my actions and what I was going to say to people. And then not only that, but it also made me realize that when people talk to me in a certain way, I have to do something,
in prison, or just now I'm curious, how does that, so this guy, you kind of befriend him, right? He's like a warrior type. He's being cool to you, gives you a magazine. And then, yeah, to your point, you're like, "Oh yeah, dude, I'll give it back to you when I'm done," whatever. Yeah. So he punches you in the face, right? Yeah. Why do you think he did that in the middle of the yard? Just, did he want to show, did he do that in front of a bunch of other people?
Yeah. And I had disrespected him in front of people. And so, at the time, I'm the youngest person on that yard. I'm the youngest person on this whole prison yard at that time. And, so I get it, or I get it now. You can't, you shouldn't do that. But
what do you think that changes with society today? I'm curious, like your take, like at a relatively young age, you got learned that if you say something the wrong way, you're going to get punched in the face. And, I'm fortunate that when I was growing up, I had some people around me who basically, like, the thing was like, don't talk shit unless you could back it up. And, and also like, treat people a certain way, right? Of course. And nowadays with online and just how like it's almost became like acceptable to talk to people in a certain way online. I don't know. What have you seen? I definitely want to get back into the jail and the stories, but I'm just curious, like, do you think that set the tone for you for the rest of your life, that like the way you talk to people, you're always going to be super careful because of that? And do you think that's missing in today's world?
It's absolutely missing in today's world. And so the thing that I had to do, I had to realize, I learned as my mind became a little bit more clear, say in my mid 30s, and that people didn't operate like I did. They didn't think like how I think. So as I'm going into situations where I'm talking to people and I'm seeing what they're doing and why I don't want to be involved with them, I'm thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. Where's this going to go? As I'm getting older, this is after, again, this is like now. And people would say, "Well, you're overreacting. And I'd go, no, I know where this is going. I've been involved in these situations. And with people with the online thing, I learned, especially as I got involved with like local government politics and all of that, that what people, I would get fired up and I would be like, "What do you guys, what?" To the point where I'd go, "Okay, well, let's talk about it. Like, come meet me somewhere. Like, if you guys really think if you really feel this passionate about this, let's go. And then when I would say that, they would be like, well, why are you overreacting? It was like, no, you can't, again, and then I'm Billy, I'm the Indian guy. Like, I'm like, no, this isn't how this works. You're saying things, you're calling me names, you're putting me, you're generalizing me, or whatever you want to call it. You're labeling me as something that you don't even know me, which then affects my friendships that I've created. Most importantly, my family, my friends, and the people that, even like Esteban, that co-sign for me. You can't say these things about my character and the person that I am without having you're going to apologize, and we're going to come to an understanding. And I had to realize that through my actions and being consistent through the years, that these people that were labeling me as these things have now come to me for support, which is cool. And so instead of giving people, I had to learn, instead of just punching people in the face or wanting to fight them, in order to maybe show them that I can be all of these things that they thought I was, but not react the way they want me to react. And then get them in turn, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years or whatever, in turn, look at somebody how they looked at me and not treat them the same way they treated me, because they learned through their experience with me that, for lack of a better term, not to judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
And also, through just with the businesses and all of that, I've put myself in these situations. I've dove into it, and I've become something that all these business owners, especially in a town like Redlands, they don't know anybody like me. They don't know anybody that's been through the things that I've been through and made it to the point where I am now. So my goal was always to, when people would look at kids that are going to the opportunity schools or the continuation schools, or that don't have as much, instead of writing them off, going, you know what, I remember Brian telling me this is how he grew up. This is what happened here. Maybe we can intervene before this kid goes to prison or robs me or hurts my kid while they're at school or whatever. There's a path that people have. There's a path that people are on, and until something takes them off that path, good or bad, they're going to stay on it until they get punched in the nose, really, until they hit rock bottom. And, going all in, there's so many things. Prison is it's just a small civilization within a civilization, with all the same, tiers of leadership, there's a different economy, but everything's there, it's just things take the place of money or,
right.
Wealth. There's a different,
there's a different structure. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I think that what you're bringing light to too is like, not judging a book by its cover, I think is a really valuable, lesson here. And then also just recognizing that, like, dude, people, there is, you guys like you give hope. If you see someone, going through something, they're not too far gone, right? There's a chance for them.
Right.
There's a way to get them out. And I think that as a society, if we did a better job, myself included, of, maybe not instantly just being like, dude, that person, that's not gonna, there's just nothing there for them. It's just too far. There still is a path. And so I'm curious, from a prison perspective, how did you got out in 3? Is that what it was?
No. So I ended up going from that yard, which was outside of Vegas, to a yard up in northern Nevada. And I was there. I was on that one for a couple of years. Same thing, man. It was interesting. Like I was able to get in, for better or worse, with just some good dudes that didn't, they were serious killers. They really were. But they, for whatever reason,
I think a lot of times when people use that term, it's like, yeah, dude, that guy's a killer. Like you just assume it's like, oh yeah, he's a badass, he's a good fighter, or whatever.
yeah,
No, in your case, it's like legitimately anyways, yeah.
yeah,
I'll let
yeah.
you keep going.
And they had the, they had the medals to prove it.
On that note, though, what part does looking the part play in prison, in your opinion? We talk a lot at our Train Hard about like looking the part, acting the part. How do you think someone's presence enables them not to get in any type of altercations actually in prison?
Well, this is also something that I say to people, and I was actually saying it last week. I had my little league baseball coach, Art, who, again, is somebody that I didn't realize how much of an impact he had on me. But until I was older, I remember at one practice, he said, you need to have, your hat needs to be, and that's why I keep looking at my hat, but, your shirt needs to be tucked in. The thing that he said was, in order to be a champion, you have to look like a champion, and over the years, you hear the things that you can relate to is like Jocko saying, you brush your teeth, you make your bed, you start out that way because if you don't, the rest of your day, you're going to give up on, or whatever the case may be. Anyways, in prison, yeah, when you take care of yourself, when you work out, when you do these things, you present yourself in a certain way. You do have this like aura. I don't know, like, and I went with Esteban when Mike Glover was out talking, and Mike's saying all these things like, stand with your chest up, like don't, make yourself look like a target. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, none of these guys know this. Like, this is what this is it. And not to be disrespectful, and the things that Mike said at that thing were valuable to people that fortunately didn't have to go through the things that I did to learn these things. But yeah, it was, and they taught me early on that, yeah, you need to wash your clothes. You need to wash your sheets. You need to, we had these steel toilets. You scrubbed your toilet. You kept your toilet shiny, cleaned your floors with your hands in a shirt. And when you were around, when we were out on yard, you carried yourself in a certain way to not only not be disrespectful to your friends, but that, especially yourself. You don't want to disrespect yourself. And it's almost like people wearing suits. You see somebody in a suit and you're like, huh, well, they must have an important job, So
but your guys' suit was just the way you dressed was the same, but the way you looked in it looked different, right? And that's kind of like the same way that you could work out. And so you're at this new prison and you got transferred there. How long were you there for?
I was at that prison for about 2 years. Again, I'm the youngest guy on the yard. And things start, rolling up there. We had some stuff happen there. That was the first time that was the first I saw many people come close to death, but then it was the first time that I saw somebody die. And there were things early on that when people would say, oh, birthdays are just another day, this is another thing. And I was like, I'm never going to let that happen. I'm always going to, Christmases will always be fun, or whatever. And then, after about a year or two, you start not caring about those things. Those things aren't important anymore. And I found myself becoming this person that I didn't know I could be, or that I didn't even know was in me. Those guns that I saw, that freaked me out, getting shot at was no problem anymore. We get shot at all the time, and in plain view, doing things to get shot at. That was the least of our concern. It wasn't getting shot at. So anyways, that prison ended up being, I don't know, it was a good learning experience. And then they transferred me to a fire camp because I was getting close to, at this point, I was almost a year away from being eligible for parole. And the fire camps are the ones that go on the wildfires and actually fight with. So, but anyways,
that's some hard work, by the way, from what I understand.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard. Very hard. I'd love to see more focus on that. I've talked to, we had a really good chief here in Redlands, Jim Bierman, who actually brought Esteban onto the department. And I've talked with him a lot about reform and all of that, and kind of getting these guys jobs or reintroduction into society. Basically, these guys work harder than anybody. In fact, when they told me I was only going to be making $1 an hour and then they were going to take like 60 cents out of that, I was like, man, get me out of here. Send me back to prison. I don't want to do this shit. And I want to play handball. I want to play softball. I want to do all those things. So they did. They sent me back to the old maximum security in Carson City. So if you ever drive through Carson City on your way to Reno, you're on the 395, you come to a point where you get off and you go through you make a right and you go to the next junction of the freeway and you make a left. NSP sits right there. It was an old territorial prison. So in like the 1800s or something. At the time, it was also where they had death row. They had the gas or the lethal injection. They had the chamber there. And this is where all the wars were at. This was like the CrossFit Ranch, like you go back there. It's like, if you're playing games, then you made it. Like you're in it. And because they had tried to send me, they also tried to send me back. That's what it was. They sent me from the camp back to that prison. But at that point, they had started a youngster unit. So now they started bringing all the young. The one good thing was they brought me in and they set me in with the sergeant, a lieutenant, and one of the other officers. And they wanted me to go into this unit to help get it under control because of the people, Black, white, Hispanic, everybody on the yard I was cool with. We were cool. And I knew all of, like the big homies, for a lack of a better term. So me going in, the tattoos and all of this stuff, these kids now thought I was cool. They thought that I was like this thing to look up to.
Well, because you were a little bit older than them at that time, right?
I was a little bit older. So what they were trying to do is they were trying to keep everybody that was under like 21 in there. And it just turned into a gladiator school. And so we got in there it was wild.
And you had still like a year left at this point.
At this point, yes, at this point. And so we go through that. We're on lockdown all the time. We're just freaking going wild. But so then they then transfer me to the Carson City prison. And at this point, I had already started, I was in a gang now, and I was this and I was that. So I got to the yard where that all had started. And anyways, was just doing my thing. And then I end up in the hole. I'm in the hole for, I was in the hole for 8 months, I think. All for like.
When you say you're in the hole, does that mean you like solitary confinement?
Yeah. So they had it. There was two different, when you talk about the hole, there was two different ones. There's, what most people in California, I think, would know it as would be like the SHU. You hear about segregated housing unit, where you're in your unit, but you could still have like a TV. You just come out every you get to come out for a little bit every 2 days, and I think you got a shower every 2 days, and then you got to use the phone every like 3 days or something. And then there's the other one where it's disciplinary. So when you screw up in the hole, you go to this one where they ended up making it to where you can only be in there for 15 days because they like legally somehow figured out that you start going insane, like you with this level of confinement.
And then was that the one that you went in?
Yeah.
You went into that one. So did you spend 15 days alone?
I spent 30, and then the other one was the 8 months. Dude, it was like,
well, you're the only person I've ever met who's been in solitary confinement for 30 days. Type of,
that's good. You've lived a good life.
what type of things, like I have so much that I wrote down. I took all these notes of like things I want to talk to you about, but like, I feel like, boy, what lessons do you learn when you are solo for 30 days, like what's going through your head? Like, is there any point of you that's saying, hey, I need to make my life right. I need to get the hell out of here. Or are you so deep at that point, you're like, you just want to go fight?
Yeah, that was it. And again, I put myself in this position, right? Like I'm not blaming anybody. It turned me into an animal that I didn't know was in me.
Dude.
And it's still something to this day with all the things that I do that I don't know why I do it. And I was just, again, when I talk to people, I try to ask them questions to hopefully find an answer for myself. But yeah, you start, like the concrete, you start seeing faces, you start seeing, you start just, dude, like the toilet would freeze overnight. It was so cold. Like it was, you could touch both sides of the wall. You could, I watched this was also because since I was in that hole, when you were out for a shower, you could also walk to other doors. Like you can go talk to your friends, your brothers, whatever you want to refer to them as, you could pass things, you could do this stuff. And I had a couple other, there were a bunch of us back there that were in the same gang. And there were guys that, like, imagine, I don't remember who was in the time around when you were doing cross.
Yeah, let's just say like Rich Froning and
Imagine Rich Froning. Imagine Rich Froning. Like you've been working out with Rich Froning. You know you're going to show up with that dude. And you're going to hit it hard. This guy's going to push you. And then one day you go over to Rich's house and he's just like looking through you, and you're like, Rich, hey. These guys would get on these psych meds first of all, because they used drugs previously. So any new drugs they could get on, they were taking it. And it's like you would see these people disappear right in front of you, man. And they become this shell. And then, which is another problem, is that these people get out of prison now and they're on all of these psych meds and any painkiller they can get their hands on. And they're just totally done. It sucks. There's no use for them anymore. They can't survive in there. They're helpless. They're a wounded animal. And that's in a controlled environment. So then you get them out here where then you can get access to whatever you want.
Right.
Including weapons, including whatever. And you've become this trained warrior in a sense, right? And not to compare it to military or be disrespectful to those guys at all, but it gives you an understanding of like, I get it. Like you have these things, you have this status, you had this thing in there, you were somebody. And, but anyways.
But do you think from a rehabilitation perspective, do you think the whole system needs to be rethought? Because when I'm hearing you talk to me,
yes,
what I'm gathering from it, and granted, this is your perspective, or at least my perspective of what you're sharing, is that you started off, obviously you didn't grow up with a father figure. You started getting into trouble. That trouble turned into more. You end up going to jail, and jail just almost hardens you. And you start, because you're surrounding yourself by other guys that just like make you more and more of that thing. And you turn into something that you didn't intend to that when you were 16, 17, of course. I'm curious, like, just based on your experience, is there a different way of doing this completely? Or do you think for some people, this is the only way?
For some people, I think there's definitely people that there's no hope for. You're not changing them. I don't understand why, I don't know what the solution is to that. Keeping them in prison forever. I don't understand that. I don't understand, to me, if you have to keep somebody in prison forever, then that means your system is failing because you can't change them. So what's the point of keeping them around? The whole, again, it didn't make me, it brought out more in me. There wasn't people checking on me to see like, how is this treating you? It was, you did this thing. And I ended up going to the parole board from the hole. So I go to the parole board in, shackles and, and handcuffed and all of that. And as they're talking to me, they're asking me about all the things that I've done in there now, and go back. And it's like, whatever, I'm not getting out. And I didn't care. I it didn't bother me. They dumped me from there. And so they gave me another year. And then I went back out onto the yard. And then at that time, it was really, things were kicking off again. And it ended up to where, and again, through all of this, I'm playing, dude, I was like the Bo Jackson of the Nevada prison system. I was playing softball. I was winning championships in that, volleyball, handball, racquetball. I'm working out. I mean, dude, I was about as athletic and as much of a hybrid athlete as you could be at this time.
Right.
And again, it was, and these were, and the beauty of it, of the sports again, was my softball team was, we had me, you had guys from white gangs, you had guys from Mexican gangs, you had Bloods, Crips, dude, we were all together and none of that shit mattered at that time. And so finding that common ground is one way to get people to work together would be number one for rehabilitation, and society in general. But yeah, while all this is going on, there was a bunch of stuff that was happening within the gangs. And so we were all deciding that the guys that were there, we were deciding that we were going to come together, and we were all going to, it was not going to be good. And we were all going to the board at the same time. None of us thought about getting out. I didn't think about getting out at this time. The only thing we were scared about was this was 1999 and Y2K was happening.
Yeah.
So we thought if that happens, all this scary stuff, they're going to, what are they going to do to the prisoners? There's going to be martial law. And I'm a kid still, so I don't understand what any of this means. Anyways, all of us go to the parole board. There's about 10 of us. And none of us thought we were going to make it. We all got paroled. We all end up making our board. And we're like, what? So all of the things, again, you would have thought that they heard about what was coming down the pipeline and they wanted to kind of put it into it.
When you say it coming down the pipeline, you're saying like, hey, there's some beef happening between the Crips, the Bloods, the Whites, the Blacks, whatever, and that the jail is going to go crazy. Is that what you mean by that?
We were going to make it go crazy.
Oh, okay.
We were. There was stuff within us, within the the whites, I guess, and then we just had gotten into a point where we needed to take care of things. And so anyways, but yeah, I didn't think about getting out. It was the first time where I even thought about possibly being free, so then I get paroled and they tell me that I have other charges now that I had caught while I was in prison that I didn't know about that were waiting for me. So they take me to another county jail in Northern Nevada. And so I went from like, I'm going to get out to I'm not going to get out. And then now I'm in county jail. And now again, it's like being back in the Youngster unit where people think that I'm cool because I've been in prison and I've done these things and all that. I'm like, fuck, man, just leave me alone. Like I need to go. I'm still trying to get out. I wanted to get out by my 21st birthday and Y2K. Anyways, I go to court there. My public defender comes at me with a deal and he says that you can take this. You can get released or they'll give you another couple more years. And I go, well, when will I get out? If I take this, when will they let me out? He goes, they'll let you out today. I said, so I'll either get out today or it'll be a couple more years. And he goes, yeah. I said, all right.
Yeah.
I said, all right, cool. I said, I don't care. I didn't care about going back to prison at that point. As dumb as this sounds to anybody listening, that your mind is so, it doesn't matter. It becomes your society. Prison becomes your society. Institutionalized, whatever you want to call it. I go to court And the judge reads my thing and the same thing. He reads my sentence and I look at my public defender and I go, what does that mean? Just like I did the first time I got sentenced. Right. And it means, you're free, dude. And I go, what do you mean I'm free? He goes, you're done. Oh, let me turn.
No way. Your light turned off, but bring the light back on. I want to hear so you get out of jail, right? And now you're free. Oh, there we go. So sorry, Brian's in his home gym, and he had a fancy light on. No, it's all good. So talk me through it. So what does it feel like to get released?
So they take me back to my my cell, and you get your stuff, and they take me out to like the the rotunda or whatever, and they give me a box of stuff that I hadn't seen. There was some stuff like my wallet when I got arrested. There's stuff that I hadn't seen in 4 years, and they hand you this box, and they literally take you to the front door, open the front door, and send you on your way. It was like a movie. I was literally standing there, and my public defender pulls up in his car, and he goes, "You need a ride?" And I go, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "All right, come on." And this dude, he takes me to a Mexican restaurant, buys me a pack of cigarettes, and then he takes me to the bus stop because I had to catch the bus to get to Vegas. And I feel like that was the first time, and maybe that did click. Maybe that did get the things rolling, to where it was like, this dude's cool. I can be cool to other people. And there were prison guards that, they were like, "We'll see you soon. You'll be back." And I was like, "I'm not coming back to this fucking place, man." As I was walking out of prison, or when I was being transferred from the old Max, one of the guys said, "Hey, go talk to my buddy in Vegas when you get out. He owns a tattoo shop." And I never thought about tattooing. And so that ended up being something that I pursued once I got out. But yeah, I had to take the bus from Winnemucca through Northern California to get to Vegas. So 24 hours, the first day of freedom I spent on the bus. And yeah, man,
what does that feel like? You're in such a confined space, right? For so long, for years, you didn't know you're getting out, you get out, et cetera. What does it feel like to now have your freedom? Is there a part of it? And this is something I think about with kids and structure, right? So, and maybe this is a good segue into that. You went from having all this structure, and there's a structure obviously in the hierarchy of the jail, but also a structure in terms of like, dude, you're in your cell or whatever. Now you get out and like you got complete freedom. I mean, you're just like anybody else. You can go do anything you want, right? Was that for you? Was that like a scary thing? Because I think about that sometimes with raising kids, and I'm curious your thought on this, of like how creating some type of structure and guardrails is that it allows for that discipline. It allows for you to thrive in. Whereas if you have all this freedom, it's very hard to thrive in. I don't know if that's the exact parallel, but maybe you see where I'm going with that.
Yeah, no, it is. You have to have. I mean, for me, you have to have goals. You have to keep goals that then, in my opinion, do keep you disciplined, whether it is training or working out or whatever the case may be. For me, like looking back on it right now, I don't know if it was scary. I can't remember it being scary. I remember just sticking to myself as I was getting off these bus stations in Fresno, dude, Bakersfield. It was like, where the heck? And, but no, at that point, I did not have any contact with anybody from prison. That was not on my mind. I was not going to surround myself with anybody. My parole officer ended up being somebody. He kept on me. He's like, "Who are you hanging out with? What's going on?" I was like, "I'm not hanging out with anybody, man. I'm trying to do my thing." And anyways, I got into tattooing, and that saved my life, man. If I tried to get a job at a car wash, this goes back to the rehabilitation and reintroduction thing. I tried to get a job at a car wash and they wouldn't hire me. I tried to get jobs just doing whatever, just try to get a job. And, I had no high school diploma, no GED, nothing, no form of education. So yeah, if it wasn't for tattooing, man, I probably would have, I don't see anything else that really would have saved me. And,
right.
And then I also say that prison was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I would have killed somebody, or somebody would have killed me. Like, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. That was the path I was on. And so, there's a lot from that point. When I was in the hole, there was Iron Man on TV. That was the first time I ever saw an Iron Man race, triathlon.
Oh, an Iron Man race. I thought you meant like the movie. I was like, oh, never mind. I thought you meant like the Marvel character. But yes, then Iron Man. So you saw the run, bike, swim.
So I saw the swim, bike, run. Swim. I saw that, and I had one friend that stayed with me, that wrote me the whole time. She was great. She's still in my life today. But I told her, I said, I'm going to do one of these things. I don't know when or why or whatever, but I want to do one of these things someday. And she was just kind of like, yeah, all right, cool. So when I got out, I started apprenticing, and we had pizza, we had all this food and all this stuff that I hadn't had for a long time. So this is when I start blowing up, man. I started getting fat real quick, and smoking cigarettes. And I was still smoking. I always smoked when I was in prison, but I got real unhealthy real quick, and start tattooing. Something in tattooing, it was the first time where I felt like I had a purpose and I had a goal. I said, I'm going to do this, and I want to be the best. I want to be the best tattooer in the world. And I was telling people that. And I said, all I need to do, I just need somebody to teach me how to use these machines. I need somebody to teach me all these things. And whatever it was, whatever that mindset was that got me there, I don't know what did it, but I started traveling. I started trying to gather as much information as I could about tattooing, understand the tradition. I ended up getting in with the guys that started tattooing in Vegas in 78. Smiling Paul, his brother Bub, Doc Dog. Smiling Paul at the time was an old dude, man. And later on, you find out that these guys were going around. They were the only shop in town for about a decade, and it was because they would blow your shop up if you tried to open up a shop in Vegas.
Like literally blow it up.
Yeah. And if you were tattooing out of your house, they sent people to your house.
It's like that mafia, like gangster stuff.
Yes. And again, I'm not trying to glorify it, but it was. So these are the guys that I'm now learning from. And Paul, one of the things that he said to me was he was looking at my drawings, and he was turning them. He couldn't figure out which way was up and down, because I'm doing all this new stuff, thinking I'm figuring something out. And he said, you can either baffle people with bullshit or blind them with brilliance. And to me, that just meant you could blow smoke up people's asses and tell them that you're the best and you're this and this is, or, you can show them. You can show people through your actions and, consistency. These are all that he said that to me, and it really stuck with me. And then from meeting him and those guys, it kind of connected me to other tattooers, opened doors for me. And then I ended up meeting my first wife, actually, at the first shop that I was apprenticing at, which wasn't really an apprenticeship. I learned how to pierce. I was making money. Tattooing was crazy, so they were just taking anybody in.
Yeah, you were busy, and now at that point, were you 300 pounds at that point?
I was, dude. I must have been gaining like 5 pounds a week or something. Thinking about it, I ended up within that first year, I got to that. I was, dude. Yeah, I got fat super quick. Thinking about this.
What made you decide? So you made a commitment in prison to do an Ironman.
Yes.
And then you take like basically a year, whatever it is, and you're learning tattooing. You brought up a word purpose, and I think it's interesting. What role are you taking in your children's life right now to ensure that they identify a purpose? Because I do think purpose is so important. And I guess that's just, yeah. The word purpose. What is that? What do you think about when you're thinking about that? How do you translate that to your children so that they always have one?
Well, so the hardest thing is getting my, not hardest thing, I don't want to say getting my kids to understand what they have. Because it's also me understanding what they have and what they've never lived in an apartment. They've never had to go through anything. Fortunately, I've given them every opportunity. If they want to, we've got bow and arrow, we've got everything. If my son he wants to try something, we try it, we do it, surfboards, whatever. But now it's gotten to the point where my son's 10. My oldest daughter is actually 24. And then I have a 13-year-old. It's getting my 13-year-old will be starting high school. So now I'm kind of telling them, like, you got to figure this out. We can't just keep bouncing around sport to sport or whatever. It's getting to the point where you're going to need a car in 3 years. What are you doing to prepare yourself for that? I'm not going to be able to buy you a car. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be able to pay for you to go to college. So figure out a sport. You have to figure out a sport. You have to focus. And that will be trying to tell them that will be your easiest route. If you start right now, if you start really pushing yourself, they can do a little bit of everything, but if they could focus on one thing and not be overwhelmed when they do turn 18 with life, that's what I'm hoping for, is getting that to click without being an asshole, without yelling at them, without, taking everything away. Because my kids are cool, man. They're really cool kids. So the purpose part, they get to experience a lot of the toy drives and the stuff, again, that we do with Esteban. And they get to see, they know that there's people that are way less fortunate than them. And they also know that we look out for those people any opportunity that we can. So they understand that. They understand what being a good human is. And I want to be able to accept that that's enough. But it just scares the shit out of me, man, to not expose them to getting punched in the face, like you almost.
Yeah. How do you do that? Right. Where you don't want them to get punched in the face. You don't want them to face this hard adversity, but you need them to overcome struggle to get, like, everybody's going to get punched in the face. Like, that's a figure of speech.
Yeah.
But how do you, so is that through sport for you? So the way I like to do that is, I think that fitness is this catalyst that could just really just put you on a path of success in all other areas, because you're intentionally trying to do hard things. Is that kind of what you're doing? Because you have been literally punched in the face. You have gone through this adversity, right?
Yeah.
And is the closest thing that you could think of to giving your kids that same experience, obviously within reason, is it through sport? Is it through fitness, in your opinion?
I think so. I think it's obviously a tangible way, because again, you could lie to people and you could become something. And at the end of the day, you're a shitty person, but the people don't really have anything to pin on you. With sports, there's a metric, and, you do find your role, whether it's being a home run hitter or the dude that gets on base to, get to bunt or to get those base hits. And then you also realize that everybody has their role and it's equally as important. For sports, you posted something the other day that said, you either said fitness or exercise is a gateway drug to success.
Yeah.
And once I got up, when I was partying, when I moved to California, we still partied for a couple more years, and I just, I drank every night. I was wasted every night, but I was still functional. That's the crazy thing, is I was still able to paint. I was still able to tattoo. I wasn't a flake, but it got to the point where I told my buddy that, I was like, why are we doing this? We're hanging out with each other and we're drinking at bars. Like, what's the point? Like, this is really dumb. So I started riding I had bought a mountain bike, and like a $20 mountain bike from a pawn shop. And I would get up and I would ride it like a mile, and my butt would be sore even from that. And then I started going to the gym, and I was still drunk. Like I'd still be drunk from the night before, but I knew I had to keep going, whatever it was, whatever this driving thing was. And I'd go over to LA Fitness again, smoking cigarettes on the way to the gym. Started hitting the treadmill with an old roommate. At that point, I specifically remember this guy, Shad. He came over and hit the treadmill. He goes, "Okay, run for a minute and then walk for a minute." And at the time, I could only run at like 5 miles per hour. That was my first introduction to intervals, and went from that. And then I would hit the elliptical. And this was like 2005, 2005-ish, 2006 maybe. And there was a trainer named Chris, and he said, "Hey, the other Chris is starting this thing called CrossFit, and we're going to do it at Ford Park." I was like, "Well, what is it?" He's like, "Well, it's just this exercise." I was like, "All right." Literally nobody had heard about it. Nobody knew anything about it.
It was early. That was early for sure.
I want to say that Chris he affiliated or whatever it was called at that time, but he was either the 36th or the 63rd or something like that, like something real low. Anyways, we started working out. I couldn't do a pull-up. The first workout he gave me was 5 pull-ups, 5 dips every minute for 10 minutes. Couldn't do it. So I'd use the assisted machine. And then that was the first time I touched a kettlebell. That was the first time I had done a box jump, and everything. Nobody wanted to do CrossFit. Everybody thought kipping pull-ups were stupid. Everybody thought all these things were dumb. And anyways, it got to the point where everybody stopped doing CrossFit. I was the only one showing up in the morning, so Chris couldn't come. He told me, he said, "I just can't keep showing up. You're the only one." So, all right. So then I had learned enough to where I could go back into the gym and do the intervals. And then I would do like push-ups, sit-ups, squats. And I was using the plates that had like the grip as kettlebells.
Right.
They didn't even have kettlebells at the gym at that time. And then I went out, I was working in Upland, and the Kinnicks were out there. I don't know if you remember Jeremy Kinnick, but he did.
Yeah, Kinnick. Yeah, Jeremy Kinnick. Yeah.
So his gym, I remember seeing a bunch of people running. And I was like, "Man, what are these people doing?" Went in there, and I started working out with Jeremy. That was before Jeremy and his brother. They had a real cool little thing going, and started doing that. I bought a fixed gear. I still have that bike right here because I didn't want to dive into triathlon stuff. I didn't want to buy expensive stuff.
Right.
But I still wanted to do a triathlon. I still needed to do this Ironman. And I started doing that. And
then everything else kind of, I imagined it just spun, right? Yeah.
Dude, and that's where the exercise is the gateway to success. If I wouldn't have started exercising, I would have continued to hang out at bars. I would have continued to hang out with the same people that I was hanging out with. Dude, I didn't smile. My teeth were jacked up. I was this big, fat, scared, like people didn't want to talk to me because I still didn't really talk to them. And then the exercise happens, and then you're pushing each other. And I had stopped. When I moved from that shop, I went down to Encinitas, and I was started tattooing down there because of people that I met at getting out there, getting at conventions, and real nice people that a year or two prior wouldn't even talk to me. And now they're like my family now, still to this day. Anyways, Encinitas was the mecca of triathlon. That is where these guys, these lifeguards, and these cross-country runners were sitting around at a barbecue, and they decided, let's see who's the best. And there was a store called Nitro. Those guys were getting tattooed at the shop. So they start helping me with equipment. And we have all these pro athletes coming into the shop. I'm able to pick their brains. And then, I start cycling. So now I'm wearing spandex and I'm looking like a goofball. And there's this weird thing where if you keep I really believe, man, in this like manifestation of like if you keep going and you stay positive, it's not going to be overnight, but people are always watching. And the ones that really care, the ones that are real serious about like life and success, they're not going to walk up to you and hand you their success. They're going to follow you. They're going to watch you for a little while and make sure this isn't just that you're not just baffling them with bullshit. You know, you really are who you are. And anyways, man, yeah, we started getting into the triathlons. And fortunately, there was like a race every weekend down there. So got into Ironman. And then at this point, I was still like the biggest dude doing triathlons. And then I would go back to CrossFit a little bit and you know, implement some of that stuff. But yeah, and then before the coolest thing was being out on these rides with these guys down in Encinitas that are CEOs. My buddy Tony used to be one of the heads of like Johnson & Johnson. I would have never met these people if I was just, again, hanging out at bars. Would have never met somebody like me. These people have never met anybody like me. And to create these friendships through, you know, smashing yourself on a bike ride or a run or a swim. And you know that person is willing to work hard. You know that they're willing to go and they have goals. They're not going to give up on you the middle of the workday or whatever the case may be. And those are the people I want to surround myself with. My wife had to tell me a few years ago, because I would worry about, once I owned a shop, I would worry about my crew's future, which you should, right? Like you should, you know, they're not only people that I work with, they're my friends. My kids are growing up with their kids. But it was always like, man, you're going to buy a house? You're going to save some money, or, you know, what's happening? Because I felt like I had put myself in a pretty good position, and I knew that they weren't at that position, but they acted like they had everything. Not everyone, but, you know, anyways, I wanted them to have what I have. And my wife, she told me, she said, not everybody wants what you have or what you do. And people don't want to work out like you. They don't want to work like you. They don't want to do all of these things. And, you know, I never thought anybody was bad because they didn't. I just wanted them to have this feeling that I have now, you know, from, you know, getting my nutrition right, getting my fitness right, and continuing to want to learn more. I can't see just living. I can't see just waking up and going through the motions, you know, and that's why, for whatever reason, you know, I have these businesses, and the main thing for the businesses is creating, the ultimate goal for me is creating an industry for the youth. The kids that we go talk to at the schools, again, Esteban, when I owned my own shop, I wanted to make a difference in the community. The community didn't want to allow me to make a difference. I would show up with stuff at the high schools for kids. They wouldn't accept it from me because I was a tattoo shop. Esteban walked into the tattoo shop, and he goes, we have this thing called blue collar athletics, and it's to help kids stay out of trouble through sports. And I was like, what? Like, how? Okay, who sent you? Who told you to come talk to me? And I had never didn't know this dude. And I go, are you serious, man? And he goes, yeah. And I go, that's all I've been trying to do. And nobody will let me do it. And then he tells me he's a police officer and everything. And I go, well, look, we had just had the toy drive and everything. And I had a van full of shoes, clothes, dude, and just toys, everything. And he was going over to Orangewood, the continuation school, to talk to the principal. I said, well, tell him I want to help him, man. Those kids are me. And he went over there, came back, and he goes, she said, bring whatever you want, man. Do whatever you want. That was the point where I was finally able to start making these connections with these kids. I don't tell my story because I think
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. My camera turned off. But yeah,
I don't tell my story to, you shouldn't be an asshole. So when people are like, congratulations, you changed your life. It's like, yeah, but I probably shouldn't have been an asshole anyways. But I tell my story to these kids, these young adults, to give them the opportunity to relate, or to give them someone they can relate to. And then being able to go with Esteban and Danny and the other officers and be like, these are my friends. They know who I am. They know who I was. And they're still my friends. They don't treat me any different. And they're here to help you. They're here. And a lot of these kids have had run-ins with them already, with their parents or whatever the case may be. Letting these kids know, if you need shoes, if you need food, if you need whatever, walk across. I'm a half a mile from this school. No questions asked. Like, come see me before you go rob somebody. Come see me before you go steal from somebody.
And have you started? So did you start like a 50, like a non-profit?
No, I just kept everything with Esteban. So Esteban's got his nonprofit going.
We'll make sure we put that in the podcast show notes with the way he has going on. I mean, I think it's powerful what you're talking about with your businesses, because we haven't really dove into that too much, and I think that fitness as a catalyst to start for success is huge. I'm hearing what you're talking about. Starting these businesses because you want to try and impact the youth. I get where you're going with that, man. And it's just like, it's powerful because your background, it just adds even more credibility to showing people like, hey man, I was there, but you could get out, I think that's a great story to tell.
I want to, I don't know if you've ever heard of Father Greg Boyle. He has, it's called Homeboy Industries down in LA. He was able to, in the late 80s, able to bring gangs together. He opened up a thing in between two neighborhoods, started industry for him. He has Homeboy Bakery, Homeboy Plumbing, Homeboy. They were one of the first ones that really started removing gang tattoos and trying to get people jobs, teaching them how to work on a computer. Anyways, my ultimate goal is not to have all of these businesses. Like that's not like successful to me. Having money and all of that stuff is the money, and the businesses ultimately, I hope, will be a way for me to create what Father Greg Boyle's done, but within one building, create an industry for these youth to gain experience, and almost like like
an incubator.
An incubator, that's the word. So the businesses, especially in town, that we've created great relationships with, somehow, I'm very fortunate, man, to have the trust of a lot of people in the city, and I don't take it for granted at all. And with this incubator, I'd love for these young adults to be able to come over, make bread, roast coffee, donuts, shirts, stickers, whatever, to where when anybody needs somebody from another business and they have a job opening, they come to us because they know we're putting these kids through it. Like, these kids, we're not raising them to just try to make money. We want to make them productive members of society to the fullest. When you go talk, the unfortunate thing, and there's some beautiful teachers, man. There's some people that are really trying to help these kids. The unfortunate thing, though, is that these kids, when you ask them, what do you want to be? They might be able to tell you what they want to be, but they have no clue how they're going to get to that point. And so with taking Danny, with taking Esteban, with taking, any other professionals that want to go with me, they're able to say, oh, you want to do that? Have you looked at this? Have you looked at this college? This school is right here. These people can help you. And then the other hard thing is when they go, well, you didn't go to college. It's like, well, yeah, I didn't do that, but you better figure it out real quick. You better figure out what you're going to do. And, otherwise you're going to be sitting around at 30 or 40 years old wondering where your life went, and you're not going to be able to reset.
Dude, I love that story. I think that's so I don't know. I love what you're doing, man. And because the incubator idea, setting these kids up for success, I think it's absolutely incredible, man. I think it's awesome. So if people are listening to this, is the best place, where is the best place to gather more information about what you guys are doing in Redlands, California?
Well, through even just the tattoo shops become like this hub for this, which is really cool. Something that I'm really proud of is that when people have something they want to donate or they want to, how can I help? They reach out, and depending on what it is that they want to do specifically, we're able to get them to the resource that fits them the best. So people aren't just donating money and we're just giving money away and not really seeing any tangible effect that it's having. But anyway, yeah, the tattoo shop's always good. And then I'm always in contact with Esteban and the rest of the crew there.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, it's all that
perfect.
Stuff.
It's perfect. Well, I want to be, sensitive of time here. We try and keep these an hour, but this conversation just kept going. I loved it.
Sorry,
I think it's great. There's just a lot to unpack with your story and the impact you're making. I think that, for those people, listening, I think that what I'm learning from you, Brian, is like, dude, first off, your past doesn't dictate your future. You could always make a change, and that, be open-minded on these people. And it just, there's quite a few takeaways. And I feel like we didn't even get into coffee. I really wanted to talk to you about coffee because I was just on the podcast with Gabe Yanez talking about, we're eventually going to get light roast here at Train Hard, but definitely we will put your coffee company, your hot sauce and your tattoo, all the links in the podcast show notes. And I just want to say, man, I really, really appreciated you sharing your story and shining light on kind of like people just having a different perspective, right? And we would love to have you kind of, maybe 6 months, a year from now, I'd love to be able to have you back on and start talking more about the impact you're having and what you're doing.
Yeah. If I could if I think that going back to, and I'll try to keep it short, man, but with you talking about society and how it relates, get a baseline for people and understand that political views and all of that, these people might only know that. They might only have been influenced by other people that are still haven't had the opportunity to meet other people. So instead of continuing to give other people a reason not to like you, give them reasons to like you. Don't compromise your integrity to make that happen, but just show them like, oh, okay, you don't have to put a lot of energy. Eventually they're going to want to know how you do the things that you do, because at that moment in their life, they might be miserable. Put it out there that you can help them. Put it out there that they can come do the 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats. They don't have to do anything crazy. They don't have to go do an Ironman. And then just don't force it down their throats. Consistency will pay off. You'll be able to help people. People ask all the time. And I try not to be too, forceful with trying to get my ideas across. But just understand that sometimes, especially with social media, you can get fired up, man. People can get fired up, and it also doesn't make or break you. It's not don't find self-worth in that either. There's a lot of stuff out there within your community. It's the other thing. Reach out to your community, reach out to your police officers, reach out to your firefighters and all of these people. They know who needs help in your community. I watch it firsthand and I see it all the time. If you want to make a difference in your community, reach out to those people. Stop talking about things that need to change. Start making the change. And you'll see there's a lot of like-minded individuals waiting to make a change. They just don't know what to do. So I love that.
So we're trying to do here with the Train Hard Men's Club. Well, I appreciate you, Brian. I appreciate everyone for checking out the podcast. Make sure to check out the podcast show notes for what Brian has going on. As per usual, go back, check out all the other incredible guest episodes, also episodes with Gabe and I. And as per usual, keep training hard.